The night begins with a glow that seems eternal. The great hall of the palace burns with 1,000 lamps, their light reflecting off gold-plated walls and the jeweled eyes of dragon carvings. The ruler sits high upon his throne, wearing victory like a second skin. Around him, nobles, generals, and courtiers gather in glittering ranks, their laughter and voices rising in waves that echo through the vaulted ceilings. Outside, the empire is vast, the people at peace, and the banners of conquest still flutter over distant lands. This is not just a banquet, it is a coronation of triumph, a feast to mark destiny fulfilled. Yet beneath the music and the scent of roasted lamb and spiced wine, something darker hums, unheard but present, like a low note of doom beneath a song of glory. The feast is meant to honor both gods and men. Every goblet raised is a prayer to longevity, every toast a promise of loyalty. The ruler's face gleams with satisfaction as he surveys the assembly, his sons seated in perfect order, his loyal generals wearing the spoils of their latest campaign, and his ministers smiling too carefully to be sincere. The narrator's voice brings the audience into this moment. This is the culmination of a lifetime of ambition, the victory of a dynasty that once clawed its way from rebellion to rule. But as the wine flows freely, small details begin to catch the eye, the hesitation in a servant's step, the way one noble's gaze lingers on another's cup, the flicker of unease behind a forced smile. These are the ghosts that haunt every throne: envy, fear, and the hunger for power. History tells us that empires rarely fall suddenly. They rot from within long before the first sword is drawn. This night is that rot made visible, an empire at its height, unaware it stands upon a cliff. The ruler has crushed his enemies, silenced dissent, and proclaimed his bloodline immortal. Yet victory has bred arrogance, and arrogance has bred enemies he cannot see. The narrator explains how court politics have shifted in recent years, the old guard replaced by younger, hungrier men, alliances strained by years of conquest, promises broken for the sake of expediency. The empire, though glorious, is fragile, a mosaic held together by fear and pride. And pride, as history has always shown, is the most delicate bond of all. As the musicians play and dancers twirl in silken circles, the atmosphere grows dense with heat and incense. Courtiers whisper behind their fans, trading glances sharper than daggers. The eldest prince raises a toast to his father, his smile flawless but his knuckles pale from gripping the goblet. The commander of the royal guard watches him closely, as if expecting something to happen. The narrator lingers on the details, the flickering torchlight painting long shadows across the marble floor, the rhythmic drumming echoing like a heartbeat, the faint shimmer of unease spreading through the hall. Beneath the celebration, a silent contest of glances unfolds, a wordless war of patience and suspicion. Everyone knows that where there is power, there are plots. The ruler laughs, a deep, thunderous sound that once commanded armies. He calls for more wine, waving off his physicians who warn him against excess. To his court, this laughter is proof of vitality. To history, it is the sound of a man standing unknowingly on the edge of ruin. The narrator ties this moment to the grand tapestry of power through the ages, the eternal pattern of feast before fall. The Romans, the Persians, the Chinese emperors, all dined beneath banners of glory before the knives came out. It is a pattern too human to break, too ancient to escape. As the music swells and goblets clink, a servant enters quietly from a side door. He carries a silver tray upon which rests a single cup of deep red wine, its surface rippling under the torchlight. He bows low as he presents it to the ruler. No one notices the way his hands tremble, or the brief, fearful glance he casts toward the shadows behind the throne. The ruler takes the goblet, raises it high, and smiles. Around him, the court cheers. In that moment, suspended between triumph and tragedy, the fate of a dynasty sits in a single cup. The narrator pauses, letting the audience feel the weight of that silence. The sound fades, the music dies, and only the crackle of torches remains. What began as a night of glory will end in whispers of death. And somewhere in the crowd, someone knows it. The poisoned feast has begun. The laughter that once filled the royal hall now lingers like smoke, thin, fading, and heavy with suspicion. Behind the jeweled smiles and perfumed robes, whispers begin to weave a web that no one can escape. The ruler's feast has ended, but the night has only just begun. In the echoing corridors of the palace, secrets move faster than servants. Eyes follow every movement, every cup, every word. What was meant to be a celebration of unity now trembles with distrust. The poison may not yet have taken its victim, but its presence can already be felt in the air, invisible, insidious, and unstoppable. The court, so dazzling in public, is a battlefield in private. The narrator guides the audience through the unseen politics of the dynasty, exposing layers of deceit and ambition. The ruler's eldest son, once seen as heir apparent, has grown resentful of his father's favoritism toward a younger child. The queen mother whispers counsel in dark corners, manipulating the line of succession with maternal devotion and quiet cruelty. The generals who fought for the empire's victories now find themselves sidelined by civilian ministers, and the bureaucrats, in turn, live in fear of the military's growing influence. Each man in the court has something to gain, and something to lose, by the ruler's death. In the history of kingdoms, loyalty lasts only as long as it serves survival. Beyond the palace walls, foreign ambassadors await news of weakness. One of them, a sharp-eyed emissary from a rival empire, has already bribed courtiers to feed him information. The narrator explains that espionage and poisoning were as common as diplomacy in ancient courts. Silent wars fought not with armies but with cups, letters, and smiles. The poisoner's art was refined over centuries, arsenic hidden in honey, hemlock dissolved in wine, or powdered gemstones ground fine enough to mimic salt. To the viewer, this is more than intrigue. It is a revelation of how science and murder coexisted beneath the golden veneer of civilization. Inside the inner chambers, tension grows thicker. Servants exchange uneasy glances as orders contradict one another. The royal physician, a cautious man schooled in herbs and omens, notices something strange: a new jar of imported wine, unmarked and never before seen in the royal cellars. He dares not question it aloud. History has shown that suspicion can be deadlier than poison itself. The narrator paints the court as a stage of trembling actors, each fearing to speak, each pretending to be deaf to the rising storm. In such an atmosphere, even silence becomes dangerous. The audience begins to sense the shifting power beneath the surface. One noble, whose loyalty was once unshakable, meets secretly with the commander of the guard. Another sends a letter sealed with wax to a monastery, ensuring his family's safety should the dynasty fall. The queen's attendant overhears something. Half a sentence, a name whispered with fear, and vanishes before dawn. The narrator explains how rumor, in times like these, becomes more powerful than fact. A single whispered accusation can destroy an entire bloodline. The feast's aftermath becomes a night of maneuvering. The courtiers, too wary to sleep, linger in their chambers, rehearsing false alibis and preparing defenses for crimes not yet committed. The heir paces, tormented by both guilt and anticipation. Did he order the poison? Did someone else act in his name? Or was it all a cruel trick meant to frame him? The story's brilliance lies in its ambiguity, the sense that every person is both victim and perpetrator. Emotionally, the audience feels the claustrophobia of power. No door is safe, no trust is pure. The narrator steps back to connect this turmoil to a broader historical truth. Every dynasty carries within it the seeds of its own destruction. When rulers rise by cunning and blood, they are destined to be undone by the same. The court's splendor becomes symbolic, a glittering cage in which ambition devours itself. Even the most loyal servant, crushed by fear, begins to wonder whether survival might demand betrayal. As the night deepens, the tension becomes unbearable. A messenger arrives at the gates with urgent news, but no one dares wake the ruler. The air feels thick with dread, as if the palace itself is holding its breath. The narrator draws attention to a small but significant detail. The goblet from which the ruler drank has not been cleared away. It still rests upon the table, glinting faintly in the torchlight, as though waiting for someone to notice its secret. Servants have been forbidden to touch it. None of them know why. The scene ends where suspense peaks. The court gathers again the following morning, faces pale, laughter forced. The ruler arrives late to the council, complaining of fatigue. As he sits, his hand trembles ever so slightly. His cupbearer bows and pours another drink, his eyes fixed on the floor. Around the table, every glance is loaded with accusation. The narrator's voice softens, turning ominous. In that moment, every man in the room knew the truth, that power was not taken by the sword, but by the cup. The shadow that entered the palace during the feast now settles across the empire. Trust collapses. Paranoia blooms. And though no one will yet speak the word poison, it is already written in every heartbeat that follows. The dynasty's doom has begun its slow, silent march. The morning sun filters through the lattice windows, painting fractured lines of light across the marble floor. The palace awakens, but uneasily. The air is too still, the guards too quiet, the servants too pale. The ruler, who only hours ago commanded laughter and loyalty, now reclines weakly against his throne. A sheen of sweat glistens on his forehead. His voice, once thunderous, has softened into something uncertain, fragile, human. Those closest to him exchange nervous glances but say nothing. To acknowledge his illness would be to admit that something has gone terribly wrong. At first, it seems harmless. The ruler attributes his nausea to wine, the heaviness in his chest to the night's indulgence. Yet as the minutes crawl by, his color changes. His skin grows cold and clammy, his pulse quickens. The royal physician is summoned. He kneels before the throne, trembling as he takes the ruler's wrist, feeling the erratic beating beneath the skin. In the chronicles of history, moments like this are described with reverent horror, the instant when divine kingship reveals itself to be mortal after all. The narrator explains that ancient medicine, though advanced in ritual, was powerless against the invisible craft of poison. The physician orders herbs, crushed pearls, and milk to cleanse the stomach, but the ruler's breathing grows ragged. The court's celebration turns to confusion, then to terror. Servants run through the corridors carrying basins of water and towels soaked in vinegar. Courtiers stand frozen, unsure whether to approach or flee. The queen's veil trembles as she covers her face. One of the princes grips his sword hilt as if it might fend off fate. The narrator's voice slows, describing the unfolding tragedy in meticulous, haunting detail. The symptoms follow a pattern known to ancient chroniclers: the stomach cramps, the cold sweat, the trembling hands. Some poisons were designed not to kill swiftly but to humiliate, to let the victim die slowly in front of witnesses, transforming a ruler's majesty into a public spectacle of agony. The ruler gasps, his eyes rolling back for a moment before finding his son's face. He tries to speak, but only a hoarse whisper escapes, something half between a command and a plea. The narrator lingers on this moment, turning it into the emotional heart of the episode. A father's authority disintegrating before his heir, a dynasty collapsing not in war but in silence. The hall that once rang with music now echoes with the sound of retching and prayers. Outside, the city remains unaware of what is happening within its golden walls. Inside, time slows to the rhythm of labored breathing and the creak of the throne. The physician calls for charcoal to absorb the poison, but it is too late. The ruler's veins have turned dark beneath his skin, a creeping map of death spreading from his stomach to his limbs. The narrator connects this to the knowledge of the time, how some poisons were concocted from natural minerals, snake venom, or nightshade, their effects both predictable and untraceable. To the audience, these details anchor the drama in reality, reminding them that this is not legend but the methodical cruelty of history. Then comes the stillness. The ruler's hand tightens around the armrest of his throne, his body convulses once, and then stops. A goblet falls from his hand, rolling across the marble floor with a ringing echo that feels endless. The courtiers fall to their knees, some out of grief, others out of calculation. The queen lets out a low, broken cry that cuts through the chamber. The eldest son steps forward, but the guards instinctively block his path. Already, suspicion has begun to bloom. The narrator captures the tension with a single thought: the moment the king dies, so does the peace. In ancient kingdoms, the death of a ruler was both a crisis and an opportunity. Messengers are dispatched, doors are barred, and the royal seal is hidden away. The physician, pale and shaking, kneels beside the body, unable to speak the truth aloud. This was no sickness. The scent of the poisoned wine still lingers in the air, sweet and metallic. One servant, realizing what has occurred, slips out a side door and disappears into the labyrinth of corridors, carrying the secret that will soon ignite the empire. The narrator steps back to give perspective. Across centuries, historians have recorded similar deaths. The Roman emperors brought down by cups of honeyed wine, Persian kings by poisoned figs, Chinese rulers by elixirs promising immortality. Each believed themselves untouchable, each fell by a hand unseen. The poisoned feast was never just an act of murder. It was a message, one written in the most intimate ink of all: trust betrayed. As the body is carried away, the court stands paralyzed. The ruler's crown rests on the dais, gleaming dully in the torchlight. No one dares to touch it yet. The empire, vast and proud, now has no voice to command it. Outside, thunder rumbles in the distance, as if the heavens themselves are preparing for what comes next. The narrator's tone lowers into grim prophecy. The poison has done its work, but its true venom lies ahead, in the hearts of those who remain. The palace falls into chaos. The dead ruler's body lies in state, surrounded by trembling guards and silent courtiers. In the council chamber, his heirs and ministers gather beneath murals of past glories that now mock them. The Queen Mother demands secrecy until succession is decided. Her sons glare across the table like wolves. The eldest claims the throne by blood, the youngest by cunning. The commander of the guard watches, unreadable. The man who controls the palace gates controls the future. Rumors of poison spread faster than commands. Servants vanish, generals whisper of rebellion, and foreign spies wait beyond the city walls. The narrator explains that every dynasty faces this moment. The instant power becomes vacuum. The air in the court grows thick with accusation. Each word could be a death sentence. When the messenger arrives announcing enemy forces at the frontier, fear turns to frenzy. The eldest prince calls for war, the younger calls for peace. By nightfall, soldiers fill the courtyards, banners fluttering in the storm. The commander chooses his side. Swords are drawn not for the realm, but for ambition. Blood stains the marble floors before dawn. By morning, a new ruler is crowned. His first decree promises justice for the king's murder, but the narrator's tone turns grave. Justice is now a weapon. The purges begin, the whispers grow louder, and the empire learns its deadliest truth: poison never kills, only once. The new reign begins with fear disguised as order. The young ruler wears the crown but not the confidence. His eyes dart toward every shadow, his cupbearer trembles with each pore. Outside, the empire fractures. Provinces declare independence, generals refuse to obey, and merchants whisper that the gods have abandoned the dynasty. Inside the palace, paranoia blooms. The Queen Mother, once revered, now lives in silence, guarded as much as she is imprisoned. The new ruler executes her allies one by one, terrified she might reveal secrets best left buried. The narrator ties this to history's cruel rhythm. Every usurper becomes the hunted in time. Beyond the capital, rebellion ignites. Former loyalists raise the dead king's banners, claiming vengeance for betrayal. Foreign kingdoms strike, dividing the empire piece by piece. The narrator draws the viewer into the slow collapse, an empire dying not from invasion, but from distrust. The streets once filled with parades now echo with executions. The royal physician is hanged without trial, his silence mistaken for guilt. The city rots. Libraries burn, temples empty, and famine spreads as fields go untended. The narrator reminds us, the poison was never just in the cup, it lived on in the hearts of men. One night, the ruler sits alone in his hall, crown heavy upon his head, staring at the same jeweled goblet that began it all. He dares not drink. In that moment, the audience understands, he has inherited not power, but the curse. Centuries later, the empire exists only in ruins. The great city lies buried beneath earth and legend, its name spoken in awe and pity. Chroniclers tell many tales of its fall. Some blame ambition, others divine wrath, But all agree on one truth: the dynasty died at its own table. The poisoned feast becomes a myth, a symbol retold across ages. Historians debate its details: who mixed the venom, who lifted the goblet, who survived to tell the tale. The truth no longer matters. What endures is the warning that every empire carries its poison within. The narrator shifts tone, showing nature reclaiming the throne room, vines creeping over stone, birds nesting where kings once ruled. Time erases grandeur but preserves meaning. The earth remembers, the narrator says, even when men forget. In a museum centuries later, the relic of the dynasty, the jeweled cup, rests behind glass. Tourists walk past, unaware that the object they see ended a civilization. The poison is gone, but its echo remains. Power, greed, and betrayal, these are the toxins that never fade. The camera pans upward to a starry sky, bridging mortality and eternity. The narrator closes softly. The feast ended, the crown fell, but the lesson endured, that no throne can outlast the hand that poisons it. The screen fades to black, leaving the audience in silence, haunted by a truth older than history itself.